All right, so the agenda for this session is that we're going to start with our student panel Q&A, and that'll go on for about half an hour or so. We'll be asking the student panelists some questions about their virtual internships they did during the last summer, and then we'll open the floor to questions from you all. And then Raven and I will give a brief virtual international internships 101 presentation. And then we'll end just with the last couple of minutes about with telling you about upcoming virtual internship provider sessions that are going on. All right, and then before we let the panelists introduce themselves, we have Emma from Ross, who interned through a provider called SageCore. And then we also have Armando, who is an LSA student who interned through Global Experiences. So we'll get into the panel right now. Oh, and real quick, there's a question, where can the recording of this meeting be accessed? If you RSVP'd to this, you will be able to access the recording of the presentation. We'll send a follow-up email to all of our students or all of the attendees. And also, I'll just send a quick link in the chat. It will also be included on our website once we have the recording and that link there. All right, Raven, do you want to start the questions for our panelists?
Sure. So would you both mind introducing yourselves, what you majored in, what year you are, that sort of information?
Yeah, I can go first. Hi, everyone. My name is Emma. I am currently a senior studying business.
And hi, everybody. My name is Armando. I am a junior studying international studies with a subplan in security norms and cooperation. And I'm also double majoring in anthropology.
So Em and Armando, how did you get started with searching for a virtual international internship? What did that process look like?
Yeah, so when the pandemic first started, I was abroad, which is what really piqued my interest in a virtual international internship. So I utilized Handshake, the University Career Center, Ross Recruit, and I actually ended up finding my internship through an advisor from a study abroad program I had done freshman year. She sends all her old students emails with international opportunities and programs. With that being said, speaking with people that are global program advisors can be helpful in finding an internship, which is what I did.
Yeah, and also very similarly to Emma, I wasn't abroad, but I already had plans for the summer. I was going to intern with the Spanish consulate in Puerto Rico. That's where I'm from. That's where I live. And this pandemic just kind of threw everything overboard, and I wasn't able to get many of what I had intended to be done. So I actually met up and set up an advising meeting with Jake, and he was able to connect with me with the Opportunity Hub and with some an almost sort of compilation of third-party internships that are partnering with the university to set up or to just explore and go from there.
Thank you both for those answers. You've touched on this a little bit, but I'm curious, when it comes to the actual researching and selecting a provider for an international internship, a virtual international internship, do you have any advice for students who are starting on that path, potentially looking at programs for this upcoming summer?
Yeah, actually, I think when it comes to selecting internships, I think most of or one of the best ways to actually figure out if you like this program or not is to listen to people who have actually done the program and testimonials from students and alumni from the programs. that can kind of almost let you in on those little details that, you know, these big broad websites who are advertising their programs kind of don't let you in on. So more or less on what the day-to-day looks like, on what they actually were doing, and obviously most important, what's their like final impression from the program. I think those are very important things when deciding whether or not or which program to choose over.
I absolutely agree with that. I looked at student testimonials. I actually reached out to a couple alumni that had done the program, because just looking at a website doesn't give you all the information you might want or need to decide what you want to do. So absolutely reach out to people who have already done the program to understand what you're really getting into.
All right. So a question that especially when COVID started, a question that I kept getting from students and still get is, okay, so yes, virtual internships are now a thing. I wanted to go abroad, so why do some of these organizations charge money and I'm not even going abroad? So I'm wondering, for both of you, were you able to secure any funding for your virtual internships? And if you were, how did that process go?
Yeah, I was able to secure some funding for my internship. I did it through the Sage Corps program, which is the professional development program I went through for my internship. But I also know that the university also offers scholarships for students studying and working abroad. So that's also a potential option for funding if you need it.
Yeah, the LSA internship scholarship. That's hands down one of the best places to search for funding regarding internships, especially now. I think that they have adjusted their criteria and to meet that you actually need to have a virtual internship in order to secure or to just even be considered for funding. So having an internship or having plans based on a virtual internship almost puts you at a little bit of an advantage because you're already shaping around that. And also just talking with and connecting with your departments, individual departments. I know that, for example, the International Studies Department offers some sort of funding and aid for extra, like outside of campus activities, including internships and study abroads for when they do apply. And those are also great choices.
All right, that's great. Thank you both for those recommendations. Definitely good to check in with all those sources, and we'll chat more about funding and scholarships in the second half of the presentation as well. And so I did want to ask you both, when it comes to your actual virtual internship that you did, can you describe for students who are here, what was your internship? What was if you had a typical day, kind of what was that like? And around how much time did you spend interning with your company? This could be hours a day, or generally speaking, over the course of a week, you spent X number of hours interning.
Yeah, so I was responsible for business development in the Midwest. I worked for a company based in Sydney, Australia called Spacer, and it was basically Airbnb for parking and storage. So they're currently trying to grow within the US market for parking. So I would research potential parking operators that were small to mid-size in the Midwest. I would reach out to them, see if they'd be a good fit for Spacer, pitch Spacer to them, and try to get them onboarded onto Spacer's website. It was kind of a business development and sales role. I also utilized Excel and Salesforce every day. They also let me do some work with marketing material, look over the US app, make any suggestions for fixing the US website with like any differences between American English and Australian English. I also had 2 meetings a week in the evening Sydney time, and was able to set up meetings and network with anyone within the company throughout the week. So that's basically what my day-to-day looked like. And then at the end of the internship, I did a presentation and passed off my leads to my manager. I'd say I probably spent about 30 hours a week working. It just depended on if I reached my goals for that week or not.
That's incredible. That's awesome. I was able to intern with the University of Dublin, the UCD in Ireland, and I was a research assistant for a professor regarding foreign direct investment in sub-Saharan Africa and how direct investments in these countries are whether or not they're directly responsible for civil unrest. So most of my days and most of my time I was looking at Excel spreadsheets, trying to analyze the amount of money versus other factors such as whether there was violence recorded that day, that month. And I translated data from Excel spreadsheets onto case studies, and I was able to have the opportunity to write and to be a part of a massive, like a very big project within the UCD in Ireland, regarding such a like the foreign direct investments and all that. And I was part of writing and constructing whether or not the country had direct links to civil unrest. How did that civil unrest look like? So it was many, most of my job was research based and reading and a lot of sitting down and academic work. And I would say I would spend about 20 to 25 hours a week. It was very task based. So as long as it took me to read the entire spreadsheet and translate over to another, or to just translate into like writing and into words, into prose writing, I think it's most of it was task based. So I can really pinpoint into specific hours a week.
Yeah, thank you both. Both sound, yeah, super interesting. It's awesome that you were able to do that even in a virtual internship. So I'm curious what types of challenges you experienced throughout your virtual internship, whether they were like a cultural difference challenge, or maybe just a challenge because of the time difference, or just being virtual in general. Yeah, would you mind sharing about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think my biggest challenge was being virtual and trying to figure out how to be better at time management. Being at home all day and not having anywhere to be at a certain time, I didn't have to get out of my pajamas if I didn't want. It was really a struggle for me to manage my time. So I actually ended up reaching out to my manager and I asked him how he was managing his time because we were kind of doing the same tasks. And then I would just definitely recommend make a schedule for yourself. Get up, get dressed, act like you're leaving the house. Just that was the best way for me to learn how to manage my time better. It's just so easy when you're at home to walk away and do something else real quick. So absolutely, time management was a huge struggle for me. Fortunately, I didn't have any problems with the cultural adjustment just because that's where I had been studying abroad before in Australia. So I was already pretty used to that. And then luckily my manager was really good about picking good times for my schedule to talk to me over Zoom. So that worked out well.
Yeah, I definitely think that similarly, time management is always kind of an issue. I think that, you know, just sitting around in the computer all day and you just kind of lose track of your hours, you just kind of forget which day it is, and that's totally fine. I think that one of my biggest challenges was to trying to work across time zones. Most of my work was during the 9 to 5 regular working period, so I was able to find some sort of routine in there. But obviously, I had to adjust to the Ireland time over there in Ireland, and me at the time being in Puerto Rico, working in Atlantic Standard Time. You know, the time zones can get a little bit tricky, and again, it's always about finding your own rhythm and kind of sticking to it, figuring out what works for you, what doesn't, and just always keeping a good line of communication with you and your supervisors and those working with you, because there's no such thing as being overly communicative. So I think that's one of the best things. Yeah.
Awesome. That's great. Thank you both for those responses. We did get a question in the chat about adjusting to time difference, working online, and how one feels about the fit into working environments remotely. I believe, Armando, you touched on that a bit in your answer. Feel free to elaborate if you'd want to. Emma, I don't think with the time zone piece that we've gotten that from you, if there's anything you want to share.
Yeah, so I guess the beauty of working online is you can do a lot of the work on your own time. So the time difference for me wasn't horrible. I met with my manager at, I believe, 8 to 9 p.m. and it was morning for them. So I think that's just something you'd have to talk to your manager about, figure out a time that works best for you and them, because I mean, I was working in a 15-hour time difference. So that was at first a challenge, but working online made it better. And then to answer fitting in the work environment remotely, I did struggle with that a little, just because I went into this job with not a lot of experience in what I was doing. So it was a lot of learning by myself. And I just want to echo what Armando said. Absolutely communicate, communicate, communicate. If you're struggling, reach out. If you have a question, reach out. If you want to take on more responsibilities, reach out. You can definitely never over communicate.
I said it, you know, just having a good line of communications with your supervisors and your fellow internship mates and coworkers is also very important, because I think one of the biggest benefits of working online is how easy it is to either relay tasks or to just ask for like actual live assistance. And I think, you know, for example, I would sometimes have a lot of struggles understanding some graphs and some charts and some data that was given to me, and I would just quickly share the document with a coworker that I have from the internship program, and they were like, "Hey, can you help me out with this?" And you know, just this collaboration that is done and can actually most likely only be done via an online format is actually one of the best things that could work in everybody's favor. And I also think that the time difference, most of it was adjustment rather than struggle. I was definitely having just a little bit of a struggle, because you know it's 5 a.m. over here, but it was 8 hours of a difference over there. And you know, when should I respond to an email? How should I respond to the email? Whether you know, those little small logistical details that can be quite tedious at times, I would say. And I think that when you're able to almost sort of get a routine going and, you know, have everything, all your components laid out in a way that is easy and accessible for you. Like, for example, I have a phone where I can have a different time zone in a little display, and that will help me tremendously, because, you know, I would have that to my advantage. And same thing with my computer, and trying to configure it to adjust to like kind of the online setting over there, and have me just kind of adapt to that. I think was one of the best feelings, and also kind of works into the fitting in the work environment. You know, you're just kind of breathe in, flow, and just work with it, and everything will turn out well. Yeah.
So at when I introduced both of you, I mentioned that you went through these third-party education abroad providers, global experiences, and Sage Core. Could you both talk a little bit about how it was like working with these organizations, like before, during, and after throughout the internship process?
Yeah, so I just want to start by saying Sage Corp was amazing. I had a great experience with them. So you apply for the program and do a virtual interview just like you would if it was a regular internship. And then when they accept you, you choose the type of internship you want. I chose business development and sales. I think they also offer marketing, design, and finance. If you're interested, they said they could try to find a finance internship for you. And then Sage Corp helps you connect you with these global startups to interview with, and they support you along every step of the way. So before your internship, you get to take classes and get certifications. For example, I did lead generation and Salesforce certifications. And throughout the program, there's weekly guest speakers, panels, networking, and events to give you exposure to different industries. They also help you with your LinkedIn and resume before and after the internship, and offer you as much career advice as possible. So then after you go through the whole program, they give you opportunities to continue to be involved with the program, which is something I've really enjoyed. For example, I actually just got an email a couple days ago asking if I wanted to be a mentor for the upcoming fellows this spring. And then also you're part of the alumni LinkedIn page where they post about all the different opportunities. And it's also a super flat line of communication. The founder actually reached out to me just to say something before I did this panel. He just wanted to say hi, see how I was doing. So they definitely stay connected. You can definitely stay involved if you want. And my experience overall was great. They were super helpful. If I ever had any issues, I could reach out to my mentor. And if you guys have any questions about SageCore or want to reach out to me after this, I'm more than happy to answer any other questions.
Likewise, global experiences were amazing. They have a very, very strong focus on cross-cultural identities and working around those cross-cultural identities. So most of my training revolved around navigating cross-cultural differences, how to obviously uphold a professional like a professional workplace standard and behavior, and understanding how the workplace culture is in wherever you are being placed. So in addition to, training to prepare for a virtual internship with time management skills and skills regarding how to, say, work with your computer to best maximize storage so that you can keep your files in all one place in a neatly organized, like, virtual workspace. Most of my, we had a lot of cultural events where there were, because the way that global experiences work is that they have their headquarters in the United States, and then they have different sort of, best way I could describe them is outposts in different countries. That's where they would connect you with the different internships. You would apply. If you get accepted, you are placed in whatever outpost you are given, and you are guaranteed an internship on whatever like section you choose. I, for example, chose global government and communications, and I was outposted or placed in the Ireland section, but I had colleagues from Spain, Australia, Japan, Korea. There were all sorts of places, and they held cross-cultural events. Like they even performed a cooking show for us from all the different places that they had people in. And there's a very, very close line between your mentor and you, to the point where I think there were only 9 other people aside from me, so like 10 total and a mentor. So the mentor student thing, line of communications is very direct, very clean, very clear. And once you are done with the program, you are placed in their Facebook group and their LinkedIn group, and you are in this huge network of other alumni and employers and internship seekers who can almost sort of, have a leeway because you did global experiences. So yeah, and as Emma just said, I am more than happy to answer any questions regarding global experiences and connect you with any questions you might need.
So speaking of LinkedIn and employers, another question I'm curious about, your experience this past summer on your virtual international internship. Has that impacted your plans for your career in the future?
So yeah, it definitely has had an impact on what I want to do with my future. Specifically because I did learn a lot about what I like and what I don't like in the workplace, in the position I was in. It just taught me a lot about what I want my work environment to look like. And also it's led me to, when I was applying for jobs, to apply for jobs that were with global firms. So then possibly if I wanted, I could have the opportunity to work abroad. So and the whole program itself, there was a ton teaching me, like, how should I look for a career? What do I want in a career? What's the best way to go about the career search? So all of that really did help me think about my future.
Yeah, I think that most of what happened, or most of what global experiences had as a focus, as well as cultural identities and navigating through different cultures, was the importance of networking, and how sites like Facebook, and when done professionally, LinkedIn, and even email groups are essential to maintaining connections, especially in the virtual workplace and the virtual world. So they definitely taught us how to navigate through those, and more specifically, how to communicate with people to almost stand out, almost, because in a ever-growing world and in a highly competitive environment, such as LinkedIn, such as trying to secure an internship, it's definitely good to have a few tricks up your sleeve, as they would call them, that would kind of separate you from the rest. And while doing so with keeping values in hand, and keeping while remaining true to who is as oneself, because obviously they valued and they want you to be you. And I think that's one of the best things that they did in terms of professional networking and environment, because it's true. I can't stress the importance of networking nowadays.
All right. Well, yeah, thank you both so much for your answers. I'm glad you both had such positive experiences with the providers too. So that's great to hear and reassuring. We do have a few minutes left of the panelist portion of this session. So I want to open the floor to the attendees. And if you have any questions for Emma or Armando, feel free to unmute yourselves and ask, or just type into the chat box, and yeah, we'll make sure they get answered.
I have a question. Hi, Emma and Armando. Is there anything that you think you gained by, I think with the international internship, by being virtual, gained versus being like on the ground in an international space?
I would have, sorry, go ahead, finish your.
No. I've heard you talk about like managing time zone differences, you know, and managing your time. And I think those are examples, I think, of something that you learn when you are not on the ground.
Yes, absolutely. That's what I was going to say. Like, of course, I would have loved to be there in person. It would have been amazing, but I did get a different experience and learn a lot that's going to help me in my future career, especially right now. I'm graduating and I'm sure my first job is going to start virtual, unfortunately. So it really did set me up to be more flexible. I know how to be flexible in the workplace now. The time management absolutely is super important. Even just working across cultures and learning how to communicate, not only over Zoom and texting and email, but also with a completely different culture, is something very valuable that I gained.
Sorry. Yeah, I think one of the biggest things that I was able to learn during the virtual internship was discipline. I think discipline is a factor that, yes, it can be learned and it can be mastered during many other aspects of one's life, including on the ground in like international internships. However, when you're in the comfort of your own home, when you're in your walls with your family members, with so many other distractions that come with being home, not necessarily meaning that those distractions are bad, but they're distractions nonetheless. You know, you have your brothers, if you have siblings, you have your pets, you have, you know, the tiny little details that would make you get up of your seat and say like, oh, let me just go grab a quick snack. And then you're 2 hours in the kitchen talking with your family. You know, those sorts of things are aspects that can let you train your discipline very well. And you can also kind of set boundaries for yourself. You know, when you have your home, your bed, when you're tempted to stay in your pajamas all day, you know, it just kind of forces you to be active under a different scenario. So I think discipline is one of the biggest things that I would say that a virtual internships teaches you over anything remote outside. Obviously, there, as I said, you can learn and master discipline anywhere, but when it comes to international internships, definitely self-control too.
Any other questions? All right. Well, thank you again, Emma and Armando. We really, really do appreciate it. And you gave some, you know, awesome detailed responses to the questions. And most of all, I'm just really happy that you both had such positive experiences, because, you know, having the expectation that you're going to be going abroad and having that taken away, that had to hurt pretty bad. So the fact that you were able to turn that into such a positive experience is pretty great.
Yeah, especially this past summer, 2020, virtual international internships have been around for quite some time. Just obviously not, they haven't gained as much popularity as they have in the past year or so. So both of you, your ability to go on one of these programs that in some cases this past summer might have been the first time it was offered, or just something that's kind of out of the box in terms of what we would normally consider an international internship or an internship in general. I definitely commend the both of you for being able to take those steps. I am going to share my screen again. Give me one moment. And we're going to transition into the second part of the presentation, the overview about virtual international internships. And so with that, sorry. So virtual international internships, generally speaking, these are a couple of things to know about them. Some of this is going to be a repeat of what we've heard already from our presenters. They may provide some flexible working hours. Sometimes you might be working all on your own time. You might need to maybe once a week have a meeting with your employer. And that might be, you know, if your employer is based in Australia, there might be a several hour time difference. If they're in England, it might be a bit of a shorter time difference, but still something that you'll have to factor in. And so definitely as you're looking at program providers and different programs for virtual international internships, keep an eye out on, you know, what are the hour requirements as far as is there a synchronous portion and an asynchronous portion, as well as just the length of the program. They can be as short as 4 weeks long as, I mean, I'd say 8 to 10 is about the standard, quote unquote, but I've seen them go for up to 16 weeks, 36 weeks. There's a lot of variety in there. When it comes to the cost of virtual international internships, when we compare it with actually going abroad in person, there's definitely a price difference. There's also some variety within the realm of international internships, how much those will cost, as well as what inclusions you get. So as you're looking at different program providers, take a look at, you know, Armando mentioned several different professional development opportunities that he was offered through GE. Emma also talked about what she was able to participate in with SageCore. So look at, are there workshops? Are there connections with mentors? Generally speaking, will you be working 10 hours a week, 20 hours a week, 35 hours a week? And of course, you know, does the program cost $800, $1,100, or is it $3,000? Keep an eye on how much that costs in comparison to what you're receiving for participating in the program. Generally speaking, a good number of virtual international internships when it comes to the format, because with being online, intentionality is very critical because you're not in that workspace. You don't have your supervisor always accessible to you in the way that you would in an in-person experience. Most work is usually going to be project-based, where you're working towards a greater goal over the several weeks that you'll be interning. That's not to say that there won't be an occasional task or two added onto your workload that might be related to a different project. And then sometimes it might be smaller tasks throughout, maybe closely guided by your employer. It just kind of depends on which program you're going with, what sector you're in. And then, as we've heard from our presenters, even though you're interning from the comfort of your own home, there are still many chances for you to learn about both your host company's culture as well as your host country's culture. And if you're working for a company that is based in different countries, you can also learn from citizens of other countries and their culture as well. This is both, you know, can be seen in terms of conversations. It could also be seen in terms of just if you do happen to do an internship that is more synchronous in nature, and you're able to work at the same time that your colleagues are working, you might find something as simple as the lunch break, for instance. In the US, if someone sends an email over lunch, no one's necessarily going to bat an eye. In Spain, if you were to send an email over lunch, which can be as long as 2 hours, it's almost sacrilege. It's like, this is my time to have my lunch with my family. Why are you emailing me right now? So things like that you'll be able to pick up on as well as you do your virtual international internship. That being said, there are definitely some differences between virtual and your traditional in-person international internships. It's really important to point out that these are not exact substitutions for one another. Doing an internship virtually is more of a complementary experience to doing one in person. Whereas, so if you're able to intern virtually internationally, you're able to get that experience with communicating across cultures, able to get that experience working across time zones, but it's not the same thing as if you were on the ground in Thailand or in Japan for several weeks. Just what's available to you and what you're able to do is a bit different, but it's definitely a great stepping stone, especially looking at the job market in the coming months, if not years, and the experiences that one gains from doing a virtual international internship. There are some overlaps between what one could gain from an in-person one in the cultural realm, but definitely on the working style and format is going to be quite different. Also, something to note, so when it comes to virtual internships or virtual work in general, even before COVID hit, about half, in a survey that was conducted, 52% of employers reported that they worked from home at least once a week. Jake, I don't know about you. I know me, myself, before COVID, I was able to work from home once a week as well. I had several colleagues in the college of engineering were able to too. 68% reported being able to work from home about once per month. So working from home wasn't something that never happened. It definitely did. Now, of course, it's a lot more prevalent, a lot more dominant. And so doing a virtual internship, like Emma had stated, is a good way to show employers you've already done this, you're successful, so they shouldn't be concerned about hiring you for a remote position in the future. Something that both presenters touched on was that working from home in a virtual environment, definitely discipline, focus, initiative, these are all going to be very important. As Armando said, you have all of your trappings, your laptop, your TV, computer, so on and so forth. They're all very close, and it's very easy for a 5-minute break to turn into a 2-hour break. And so making sure that you stay on top of your task is very important. At the same time, the distance and the time zones make some aspects of in-person internships difficult. So the conversations you might have with a colleague right after a meeting or before lunch, around the water cooler, in the kitchen, so on and so forth, those aren't able to happen anymore because of the online format. And so it's going to be up to you to proactively reach out to supervisors, to colleagues, to other students who are doing virtual international internships alongside you to develop relationships and connect with one another. And so how to find a virtual international internship. There are a couple of different ways. We've listed here gooverseas.com and goabroad.com. They have reviews and information on thousands of study, intern, and research abroad programs. Both have added online programs, special tabs for those in the last year. Going Global is a database that we have access to through the library. And you can use virtual or remote as keywords to search for virtual international internships. And of course, LinkedIn, very similar. You can use those keywords to find positions of interest to you in the international realm. And then Jake, do you want to talk about this last one?
Yeah, so the International Center has compiled a education abroad database specifically for non-University of Michigan affiliated education abroad programs. And we've had it long before COVID. So there are sections that are specific to study abroad and internship abroad and volunteering abroad. And we've added a tab on that database about virtual internships. So when you have access, you will all have access to this presentation after, and the link that says International Center there will take you to that database, and you can scroll through different virtual internship opportunities. And there are probably around 20 different organizations or so that we have on that list. So they've already been vetted. They're reputable organizations. But if that's still overwhelming to you, you can feel free to reach out to the International Center, and we can help you determine which of those organizations might be the best fit based off your interests. So yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Jake. If anyone on this call happens to be in the College of Engineering, we have a similar database, but with with a focus on programs that offer engineering placements. So if you want to look at those, just feel free to reach out. And of course, we're not the only college that has additional information for their students. Definitely check in with your career services unit as well as your international education unit for more information on virtual international internships. There's also the Opportunity Hub that Armando had mentioned. They're a great source of information for information on internships in general, and they also have quite a lot of virtual internships. And we'll talk a bit more about what they're offering for students in the coming weeks towards the end of the presentation.
I can touch on this. So yeah, I mentioned that the International Center has this database with all of these different organizations that are international internship providers or virtual international internship providers. This is just a list of a few, and there are many more. Global Experiences and SageCore are two of our top recommendations, even before. So full disclosure, I didn't know Emma and Armando's experience with either of Global Experiences or SageCore. So I was very happy to hear that they had such a positive experience, because I do recommend them quite frequently. So we've just listed some top organizations. I do just want to mention one thing, that some of these organizations on our list have been offering international internships for many years, as Raven has mentioned. So some are more used to working in the internship sector, while others are traditionally study abroad providers that have, due to COVID, gotten into the internship sector. And while I totally understand why they would do that, in my opinion, they might be a little bit behind in compared to some of their competitors, especially the internship specific providers. So just know that not all providers are necessarily equal. And that's where people like me and Raven can help in determining which of those organizations might be the best fit for you.
That was great, Jake, and very, very true. So feel free to reach out to either of us, especially after we send the PowerPoint, and if you're clicking through it and you get overwhelmed by the databases or just comparing programs, we're definitely here to help. And so there are several things to consider before actually applying for a virtual international internship. So we've mentioned it, the panelists have mentioned it, but definitely reach out to your resources here on campus. So your academic advisor is a good person to talk to. Most internships, particularly virtual international internships, usually there is not any academic credit attached, but sometimes there is. And so if you're getting academic credit, chat with your academic advisor to see if and how that might apply to your degree program. Also, it'd be a good idea to check in both with your academic advisor and potentially your education abroad advisor on the transferability of said academic credit if it's required. I know, for instance, within the College of Engineering, we've had a pretty strict rules about how much credit from online courses students can bring in. Because of COVID, we've modified that a little bit, and that is still the case for this upcoming summer. But at some point, it's going to revert back to, I think it's like a max of 12 hours students can bring from online classes. And so you might not be able to transfer the course back. And that's something you want to be mindful of, especially if it's required in the program. It means that some of your program fee are probably going towards the paying of that course. And so it might be a good idea for you to look into a different program if that's the case for you. Jake, do you want to touch on the transfer credit process for other students?
Sure. So when I meet with students, whether it's through those who want to study abroad through a program that is not affiliated from Michigan, or intern abroad and get credit for it, I'll say I mostly meet with LSA students, but still the general process for ensuring that credits can transfer is that there is something called a transfer credit equivalency request form that students need to fill out. If you ever are interested in getting an internship abroad and get credit for it, just reach out to me or the International Center, and I can send you this in greater detail. But basically, the transfer credit equivalency request form needs to be filled out, and then it's reviewed for all of the courses that you would like to get transferred back to your University of Michigan degree. So it can take a while to hear back from that, so we recommend doing that step first. So you just want to make sure that the credit can get approved at the university level, and then it's a good idea to have a conversation with your academic advisor to see if once that credit gets approved at the university level, you can see if it can count. For example, if you're an LSA student, if it can count towards any distribution requirements that you would like to be fulfilled. And then if applicable, if you want any of this internship credit to count towards a major or minor, the additional step is to have that conversation with your major or minor advisor. And then the final step is after you have spoken with all of the necessary advisors, everything is approved, then you will submit the transcript you receive to the Office of Undergraduate Admissions, and then after that it will be official, approved for credit, and on your transcript.
And then last but not least, make sure to chat with your career services advisor for resume and interview tips. Most program providers also offer these services, but it's usually after you apply and in preparing you for your interview with the international organization. If you want assistance with your resume and interview before you submit it to the program provider, then, or you can even do it throughout the process, your career services office is a great place to go for that. And one other note about your Ed Abroad office, even if your Education Abroad office doesn't officially sponsor any virtual international internships, they might have funding available for you. And so make sure to check with them to investigate that. And we'll talk definitely more about funding in a little bit. But that's another reason to stop by, or I guess visit them virtually. And so how the process works, turn it over to Jake.
All right. So both Emma and Armando kind of answered this already in their responses, but this is generally speaking when applying for an internship, virtual or not, through a non-University of Michigan affiliated provider. What happens is you'll apply to the internship, and then the provider themselves will interview you. If all goes well, you'll get accepted into the program, and then they'll probably give you a deadline to enroll in the program, which also includes paying either a deposit or the full fee for that program. Once that's all taken care of, then like the preparation process. So you'll work with your provider where they'll assess your skills and then figure out what employers are a best fit for you. one thing that I do want to stress too with these providers, when they're looking for employers for you, these placement programs typically will place you in smaller organizations, such as like startups or nonprofits. You know, some students always want to, you know, intern at the Goldman Sachs of the world, and that's not necessarily always the case. And a big reason why is because it's gives these students an opportunity to wear more hats, get more involved in different aspects of the company, have a greater opportunity to make an impact, as opposed to, you know, just like getting coffee or doing, you know, kind of tasks that I guess like the stereotypical intern is associated with. I tend to see that as a positive, that our students are placed in smaller organizations like that. Uh, Also, I just want you to know that it's more the norm that these placement programs won't disclose where you're placed until the very end of the process. But with that said, the students, I mean, you all should try to do your homework and research, and just to ensure that the provider that you're applying to offers the general type of internship that you are hoping to have, and hopefully that would avoid any type of disappointment or misunderstandings. So yeah, just wanted to mention that. But then once your provider prepares you for matches you with an employer and prepares you for the interview, you actually have the actual interview with your employer. And then more likely than not, you'll do great, and then you will intern, and that's the process in a nutshell. And then lastly, just wanted to mention the financial picture of virtual internships. And you know, fortunately, Emma and Armando were able to secure funding, which is great. And I do want to stress that different types of offices on campus are very well aware that virtual internships are going to be very common this summer. So they've adjusted their scholarships for virtual learning, virtual experiences. So we've provided links to the opportunity hubs, like I think it's the LSA Internship Scholarship it's called. International Programs in Engineering also has funding opportunities, as well as the International Institute. So just, look into those opportunities. Also look at your departments. Follow the advice that Emma and Armando gave about how they found funding. It was very great. And also know that it may be possible to get financial aid for your experience. I would just recommend reaching out to the Office of Financial Aid specifically, because they will look at your individual packages and determine whether or not you'd be eligible for aid for a virtual internship. And then that's on the U of M side. On the provider side, just know that there are certain costs associated, such as an application fee, maybe a deposit that would go towards the program fee, of course. And that comes with a probably a deadline that you need to, once you accept a place in the program, you'll be given some time to make a payment. Some providers may offer discounts for future in-person programs. So let's say you have a great experience with Global Experiences, for example, and want to intern with them in person when hopefully things are back to normal, and you might get a discount to their programs. And then some of these providers have what we call U of M affiliate discounts. So if U of M has a partnership with them, you might get some money off just by going through them. And if you're curious about whether or not there is a discount, just reach out to our offices, and we'll let you know right away, or look into it if we don't know. And sometimes these providers also promote these promo codes on their website too for some discounts. So I realize that it is 4 o'clock now. So I'm sorry that we don't have really any time for questions right now, but feel free to email the International Center or IPE at those email addresses. I can also include my personal email in the chat real quick too, which I didn't include. And just know, I want to say again that this presentation is being recorded and you will have access to it, as well as you'll have access to the recording as well as the slides themselves. But just in the last minute, I want to mention some upcoming events that we have that are related to virtual internships. So tomorrow, actually, Going Global, one of the resources that Raven mentioned, is having a session called The Evolution of Employment, Job Searching During COVID-19. So that could really be useful for summer internship opportunities. So definitely check that out. It's available on our website. Then next week, a week from today, SageCore is having a session specifically for U of M students called Tips to Compete for Top Internships and Jobs Worldwide, an international internship workshop by SageCore. So highly recommend that. And then there is also a Global Experiences info session next week, the day after the SageCore one. So both of the providers that have been represented today are offering internship sessions. So if you want to learn more from them directly, definitely attend those sessions. And then lastly, next week, also on Wednesday, the LSA Opportunity Hub is having their internship forum. So I just wanted to mention that as well, because there will be domestic and international internship providers there. And it's a great opportunity to meet with them directly and learn more about what their internships are about. Okay, so that's all I have. Thanks everyone for joining. Any last words, Raven?
Just echoing, thank you all for joining. I hope you were able to gain some great insights from our panelists earlier and get an idea of where to start and how to navigate your search if this is something you might be interested in doing yourself this summer. And with that, I'm going to stop sharing. Stop recording.